Welcome to the Dup Dive. Today we're tackling a really fascinating piece of research you shared. It's a systematic review,
Hmm.
and it looks at how secondary schools are trying to, well, boost their environments by getting students like actively involved.
Yeah, the title is pretty academic. Active Student Participation in Whole School Interventions in Secondary School, a systematic literature review.
Right. Sounds dense. But the findings, I think, could really shift how we think about improving schools.
Absolutely. It digs into these, school-wide programs aimed at making things better for everyone.
But the key thing, and this is what grabbed me,
Yeah,
is the focus on how students are participating, like really participating.
exactly. It's not just about students being sort of passive recipients. It's about genuine involvement in shaping things,
Right.
which, raises that big question.
Does giving students more agency actually lead to better results?
Precisely. Does it make the change more effective?
And for our listeners, people who want to get to the heart of complex stuff efficiently, this is great because the review, it synthesizes findings from 13 different programs?
That's right. They did the legwork.
So our mission here is to pull out those key insights, those aha moments, without getting totally bogged down in academic speak.
Right. And they started big, over 200 publications initially.
Wow.
Yeah, then they really filtered it down. Ended up with 22 reports on those 13 specific programs in secondary schools where students were genuinely active.
Only 13 programs meeting the criteria, that's interesting in itself, suggests this specific kind of active involvement might be, well, less common or maybe less studied than we think.
Could be. It certainly highlights the focus of this review.
And one of the main tools they used was this concept of levels of active student participation. ASP, they call it.
Yes, that 5-point scale,
I found that super helpful. It goes from very high ASP
where students are actually in decision-making
all
roles.
the way down to very low ASP,
Yeah.
where they're basically just receiving information.
And we're going to focus a lot on those programs at the higher end, the ones really empowering students.
Because that's where we might see the biggest difference, right? If the degree of involvement matters.
That's the idea. Does just ticking a box for student involvement cut it, or does the level really drive change?
Okay, but before we jump into the specific programs and levels, the review sets the stage. It talks about why the school environment itself is so critical.
Yeah, they pull on a lot of existing research there.
And it basically shows this strong link between a positive school environment and, well, student well-being. It's not just about kids liking school, is it?
Not at all. The research is pretty clear. A good school environment links to better academic results, better relationships, better behavior overall.
And the flip side.
A poor environment linked to things like substance use, bullying, serious negative outcomes. So it really highlights why these interventions are needed in the first place.
Makes total sense. If you don't feel safe or respected, how can you learn? But the review also mentioned that previous research had some limitations, gaps they wanted to fill.
Yeah, a couple of key things. One was that a lot of older research focused on elementary schools.
Ah, right. Secondary schools are different beasts, more complex socially.
Exactly. And they've had less attention on this specific angle of student involvement.
Okay.
And even when studies did look at secondary schools, they often didn't really examine how much students were involved or what kind of involvement it was.
So this review is trying to zoom in on that active participation piece in secondary schools specifically.
That's the core focus.
And this idea of active involvement, it's not just a gut feeling, right? They mentioned self-determination theory. Can you unpack that a bit? How does it connect?
Sure. Self-determination theory, at its heart, suggests that people, well, thrive when they feel they have some control, some autonomy over their lives, agency. So for teenagers in school, feeling like you're an active agent, like your voice matters, like you can contribute, that's apparently really important for well-being, identity development, just being engaged with school.
Yeah, I can see that. Feeling like you're just being told what to do all the time. That's a recipe for disengagement.
Definitely.
And the review also notes this isn't some brand new idea, right? There's history here.
Oh, for sure. Decades of research links student involvement to better learning environments, a stronger sense of school community, kids taking more responsibility. It's got a solid track record.
And this connects to that term student agency. That seems key. How does participation build agency?
Right. Agency is basically that feeling of being empowered, feeling capable of acting, of making a difference in your school life.
Okay.
So when students are actively participating, sharing ideas, making decisions, leading things, they develop this sense of ownership. Co-responsibility. Like, this is our school environment, you know?
Yeah, and they become more invested in making it better.
That's the theory.
Okay, so methodology. How did they actually figure out the level of participation, the ASP score, for these 13 programs?
It was quite rigorous, actually. They had 3 researchers independently look at every single activity described within each program.
Okay.
And for each activity, they assigned a score on that 5-point ASP scale we talked about.
And crucially.
Crucially, it wasn't about how many students were involved. It was about the role students played.
Ah, right. So a small group making real decisions would score higher than a huge group just listening.
Exactly. It's about the depth and nature of the involvement, not just head count.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff. The programs with very high ASP, where students were actually decision makers. 6 programs hit this level. First up was AB3, an unnamed anti-bullying program. What did decision-making look like there?
In AB3, it was pretty significant. Students weren't just giving feedback. They were actively involved in actually developing the school's whole anti-bullying policy.
Wow, the actual policy.
Yeah. And they helped identify the specific prevention strategies the school should use. That's real ownership.
That is real agency, shaping the rules. Okay, next was CFS, Cyber-Friendly School. Positive tech use focus. How are students decision makers there?
CFS used a collaborative model. Student leaders worked right alongside staff to review the school's tech policies.
To make sure they were, like, positive and safe.
Exactly. Getting that student perspective baked right into the rules about technology. Pretty smart.
Definitely. Then there was FS, Friendly School. This was about the transition to secondary school.
Right. And this one's clever. They involved students who had already made the transition successfully in co-developing the intervention program for the kids coming up behind them.
Using peer expertise. That makes so much sense. Who knows better than someone who just went through it?
Precisely. Their firsthand experience shaped the program design.
Great example. Next, GP, Green Dots. Bystander intervention for violence prevention. How did they involve students in decisions?
Green Dots had a few angles. They really fostered peer support and leadership roles, creating more ways for students to step into decision-making.
Okay.
And interestingly, even at the classroom level, teachers and students would actually negotiate the classroom rules together.
Negotiate the rules. That's pretty high level. Give students a direct say in their daily environment.
Yeah, potentially leading to more buy-in, you know.
For sure. Then RJ, restorative justice. Building relationships. How did decision-making evolve there?
RJ really emphasized shared responsibility. Initially, students and staff worked together on plans for restorative interventions.
Okay.
But what's cool about RJ is how student leadership grew. They started advancing whole school initiatives, even mapping course goals and deciding on projects.
Wow, that's a serious progression. Real distributed leadership.
It seems like it, yeah. A strong model for empowerment.
And the last one in this very high category, SE, or See Her, it's about adolescent health promotion, student role in health policies.
In SER, students had a direct line to leadership on health stuff. They actively discussed proposed health policies with the principal and teachers before they were finalized.
So their input was considered before the final decisions.
Exactly, making sure student perspectives on health and well-being were baked in.
Okay, so those 6 examples really paint a picture of what very high ASP means: genuine influence on policies, programs, rules.
Definitely.
Now, the review also identified programs with high ASP. Here, students were more about organizing and leading activities.
Right, a slight shift from direct decision-making to more active leadership in implementation and creation.
Let's start with creating student artifacts. 5 programs did this, like AB1, another anti-bullying one.
Yeah. In AB1, students made their own video about bullying.
And showed it to other students.
Exactly. Peer-created content can be really powerful, more relatable.
Makes sense. Green Dots, GP, also had students creating things.
Yeah, they created various artifacts and presented them broadly to parents, peers, teachers, even the wider community, amplifying the message.
Okay. And SS, Sources of Strength, suicide prevention focus. What artifacts did they create?
For SS, student leaders developed and gave presentations, often sharing personal stories, examples of how they use the program's strengths to cope.
That personal angle must be powerful, destigmatizing mental health.
Very likely. And RJ, Restorative Justice, also had artifact creation.
Yes, they had students involved in collaborative writing, like developing a rubric together.
A scoring guide, yeah. So it's a tangible output, but also deepens their understanding of restorative principles through the process of creating it.
Clever. And SERR, the health program.
Sarah had lots of creative stuff. Students, teachers, the principal contributed write-ups, poems, art to a monthly wall magazine on health themes.
Like a collaborative school publication?
Sort of, yeah. And they ran poster and essay contests, too, related to the themes,
Mm.
engaging students creatively.
Lots of different ways to create and lead through making things. Okay, the next type of high ASP was student-led activities for peers. 4 programs did this.
Right? Students leading activities for their classmates. Cyber-friendly school, CFS.
In CFS, student leaders ran awareness campaigns about online rights and responsibilities, and they even delivered cyberbullying prevention training to their peers.
Peer-to-peer education, often very effective.
Sources of Strengths, SS, also had students leading peer activities.
Yep. Raising awareness, starting conversations about well-being, presenting on strengths, and crucially, connecting peers to trusted adults, kind of like peer advocates.
Acting as a bridge, important role. RJ, Restorative Justice, peer activities.
RJ really leveraged peer connections. Students were trained to lead restorative circles for their classmates, addressing conflicts, building understanding.
Leading circles themselves.
Yes, and running workshops on RJ principles, even doing peer mentorship, really embedding it in the culture.
And SCARE, the health program, peer activities.
In SARE, student leaders facilitated peer group meetings to discuss health topics, creating that safe space for peer learning and support.
Okay, so empowering students to lead activities for each other seems like a powerful strategy. The last high ASP type was students leading activities for adults. Only 2 programs mention this, interestingly.
Yeah, this is a unique dynamic. Students educating or informing staff or parents.
Like in CFS, the cyber-friendly school.
Right. Student leaders gave teachers insights into the tech kids were actually using. And they even ran cyberbullying prevention training specifically for parents.
Bridging that tech generation gap, useful.
Definitely. And RJ, Restorative Justice, also had students leading adult activities. Yes, students actually led restorative circles and workshops for school staff.
For the teachers and administrators, wow.
Yeah. Build staff understanding and buy-in, plus it's a powerful demonstration of student expertise and commitment. Seeing students lead adults like that can be really impactful.
That really flips the script on who the experts are. Okay, moving down the scale to moderate ASP, this is more about students expressing views, right?
Exactly. Giving students a voice, even without direct decision-making power. 2 programs had platforms for opinions. Beyond Blue, BB, the mental health one.
BB provided platforms, maybe forums or suggestion boxes, where students, families, and staff could share info and perspectives on mental health, fostering dialogue.
Okay. And SEHR, the health program, also had platforms.
Yeah.
SEHR used them for students to raise concerns, make complaints, offer suggestions specifically about the health intervention topics. Could be anonymous or named.
Offering different ways to give feedback. Good. Interactive assemblies were another moderate ASP method. 3 programs used them.
Right. Making assemblies more two-way. AB1, the anti-bullying program.
They had an initial big assembly on respect and bullying, then smaller class-level assemblies to discuss themes that came up. More participation that way.
Deeper dives in smaller groups.
Yeah.
AB3 also used assemblies. In AB3, the assemblies used early on to get student input for developing the anti-bullying policy. So the assembly was moderate ASP feeding into the very high ASP decision-making later.
Ah, connecting levels. Makes sense. And Sayers assemblies.
Zahere used their monthly assemblies for group discussions on adolescent health issues, raising awareness, promoting dialogue school-wide.
Okay. And the last piece of moderate ASP was data collection. 6 programs use student feedback to drive changes.
Super important. Using surveys, feedback forms. AB1 had a bullying report form for students, staff, and parents, getting data on what's actually happening.
And AB3 used student data too.
Yeah, they collected feedback and actually presented it back to students in an assembly, then used that data to kickstart discussions about anti-bullying strategies, closing the loop.
Making the data visible and actionable. Learning Together, LT, focused on bullying and aggression.
LT did annual surveys on student needs, bullying, aggression, school experiences. That data directly guided the school action teams on policy and interventions. Very data-driven.
Driven by student voice data. Beyond Blue, BB.
BB collected annual data from students and staff on well-being structures and practices. Then the action team used that data to create their yearly action plan for changes.
A systematic feedback cycle. Green dots, GP.
GP used student surveys about the school environment to help their school teams figure out priorities and tailor strategies for their specific school context. adapting based on feedback.
And SARE used student reports and discussions, too.
Yes, the SARE Action Team deliberately planned activities based on issues students themselves raised, keeping it relevant and responsive.
So even without direct decision-making, actively seeking and using student feedback is clearly a big part of making interventions work.
Absolutely. It grounds the work in student reality.
Okay, then we get to low ASP, more structured tasks, training.
Yeah, activities where students participate, but the framework is largely set by adults, like training for peer leaders. 4 programs did this.
CFS, Cyber-Friendly School.
CFS gave selected peer leaders a 10-hour training program to equip them to lead activities on positive tech use.
Green Dots, GP, also trained leaders.
Yep, a 5-hour bystander training, focused on recognizing risky situations and knowing what bystander actions they could take.
STEC, another anti-bullying program.
Sure.
Training there.
STAC had a shorter 90-minute training, plus booster sessions. Used icebreakers, exercises, role-playing about bullying.
And Sources of Strengths, SS.
SS gave peer leaders a 4-hour interactive training, focused on identifying their own protective resources and helping peers build theirs, promoting well-being, preventing suicide risk.
Okay, so leader training was one part of low ASP. Another was interactive group activities. 8 programs used these.
Right. Students are engaged, but it's more structured, often adult-led. AB3, for example.
Small groups identifying types of bullying in their school, brainstorming solutions, maybe using prompts or scenarios.
CFS, Cyber-Friendly School, interactive activities. They used problem-solving scenarios about online safety, quizzes, case studies on cyberbullying, making learning practical and engaging.
Learning Together, LT, preventing aggression.
LT used things like encouraging students to use effective statements, and more formal, adult-led restorative circles after conflicts.
Beyond Blue, BBAB, the mental health program.
BB used small group exercises, role-playing for coping skills, quizzes, all aimed at active reflection on mental health topics.
Green Dots, GP, small groups and discussions.
GP really focused on interactive teaching in those settings, using open-ended questions, encouraging different perspectives, even respectful debate.
Sources of Strengths, SS, peer messaging.
Trained leaders shared personal stories, but also led peers through interactive tasks to help them identify their strengths. Mutual support.
Restorative Justice, RJ, more interactive practices.
Even at this low ASP level, RJ had interactive writing about harm and repair and peer mentorship activities, guided by adults, broadening the reach.
And SARE's interactive elements.
They ran monthly contests, elocution, debates, quizzes on health topics, making health education fun and competitive.
Okay. And finally, under low ASP, Beyond Blue, BB also had some individual activities.
Yeah, things like guided writing prompts for self-reflection, exercises on self-worth, belonging, purpose, factors linked to mental resilience.
It's interesting how broad low ASP still is lots of structured participation, just less student control over the structure itself.
Exactly. And the review did mention very low ASP passive reception, like lectures or just reading info.
Right.
But noted none of the 13 programs relied solely on that, though many probably included some elements of it. It was about the active components.
So pulling it all together, looking across all these levels and programs, what were the big overarching findings, the key insights from the review?
Well, I think one of the most compelling points was the connection between the highest levels of ASP.
The very high ones, like RJ and Setter.
Exactly. Those programs were often the ones aiming for really broad, overall school environment improvement, not just tackling one specific issue like bullying.
Interesting. So maybe deep student empowerment is key for that kind of holistic change.
It strongly suggests that, yeah, giving students real ownership might be crucial for achieving that widespread, lasting positive shift in the whole school climate.
That's a powerful takeaway. What about the quality of the studies themselves? Did the review comment on that?
Generally, they found the studies were pretty solid in describing the interventions and doing the analysis. But a common weakness was assessing implementation fidelity.
Meaning how well the program was actually done in the school compared to the plan.
Exactly. Were they delivering it as designed? That's often tricky to measure well, and it's important for knowing if the results are really due to the program itself, a point for future research.
Makes sense. And did they identify other research gaps? Where do we need to know more?
Yes, definitely. First, just more research generally on ASP in secondary schools. It's still relatively understudied compared to elementary.
Okay.
Second, broadening the focus. Lots of studies look at violence prevention, but we need more on how ASP impacts the overall school climate, well-being, things like that.
A more holistic view?
Right. And third, geography. Most studies were from the US, Australia, the UK. We need more research from different cultural contexts globally. Good point. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main message, the key takeaway for our listeners from all this?
I think the core message is that getting students, meaningfully involved in shaping their school isn't just a nice idea. It seems to be a fundamental strategy for real change.
Not just token involvement.
No. The research really points towards programs that genuinely empower students, giving them decision-making power, leadership roles. Those seem to have the biggest, broadest impact on the school environment and student well-being.
That really underscores the potential when student voices aren't just heard, but genuinely acted upon. So here's a final thought for everyone listening. Thinking about these different levels of participation we discussed, what kind of involvement do you think would be most effective for tackling the issues you see in your own school or your community?
That's a great question to reflect on. And it might vary, right, depending on the issue, the context.
And if you want to dig deeper, this review is a great starting point. You could look up some of those specific programs we mentioned, like restorative justice or sources of strength, see how they work in practice.
The full article has all the details and references, too, for the really keen.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, we hope this deep dive gives you a new perspective on school improvement and really on the power of student voice when it's truly activated. Thanks for digging into this research with us today.